Hey, this is Julia Beverly, photojournalist and rap historian. You can catch me on the Bootleg Kev podcast.
That's not the plan. Bootleg Kev podcast. We got a special guest in here, Julia Beverly.
I am here.
Welcome, welcome. A hip hop historian, publisher, photographer, author. What else?
I like it. Yeah, photographer. I really consider myself a photographer, but I wear a lot of hats. I do what needs to be done.
I was gonna say,
get the job done.
So you would consider like photography your main what passion would be like?
Yes. Ever since I was probably like 10 or 11, I've just taken a million photos of everything going on in my life. So I kind of carried that over into once I became a hip hop, journalist or whatever. That's still what I love to do.
So you're from Orlando, Florida, right?
I am.
Shout out to the 407.
Well, fun fact, I spent a couple years in San Bernardino, actually.
California.
Yes, California. So, nice.
Was there
I was like 9 years old, rolling the streets in my little bike,
Dodging meth labs in San Bernardino.
Yeah, I don't think that was a part of my experience back then, but they probably were there.
It's a wild place, man. San Bernardino's a wild place. Hey,
I've heard that it's like, going a little downhill.
It has. But we shout out to San Bernardino. Cyrus that's where he represents.
But I went to school and everything in Orlando, so that's where I came up, started Ozone Magazine, which is a term for Orlando. We were trying to be cool or whatever. And
so for people who don't know, because Ozone was kind of, I feel like ahead of its time a little, but in a world in which there was so much representation for media outlets on the East Coast. I mean, really, it was an East Coast-driven thing, hip-hop media as an industry. Mm-hmm. Even though, the West Coast didn't really have the West Coast didn't really have anything to really represent them without some sort of East Coast bias. But Ozone Magazine pops up as a magazine that really championed like a whole new wave that was going on in Southern hip hop. So give me kind of the rundown on how Ozone was started. And
I'm going to say it was almost like, not an accident, but I never set out to be like, okay, let me represent, Southern rap. I used to read, of course, the Source, XXL, all these magazines, and I would see the photos and be like, how do I become that photographer? Because I was really young, 18, 19,
right.
Just got a camera, just started going to all these events. I remember the first, one of the very first events I went to was like this radio show. Ja Rule was headlining or whatever, and I shot, I'm like broke, like 18.
Was it in Orlando?
In Orlando, yeah. And so shoot the show and go backstage, and they had like the whole catering tent, and it was like, oh, I could get like free food doing this stuff. That was like a big incentive, so I always joke about that. The industry... Free food in the industry was like half of the attraction at the time. But so I wanted to shoot for these magazines. So I started like trying to get in contact with them. And, being a kid in Orlando, I'm like, how do I get in touch with these, New York publications? So there was a graphic designer in Orlando called Mert Design is what he went by. And so he had started this magazine, which he actually called it Orlando Source. So he literally just took the Source logo,
took it and put Orlando.
Put a little Orlando on the top. And so I got referred to him for his second issue, and he wanted me to come, work with him. And the first thing I said was like, I think you probably need a new logo. I don't think
you might get sued.
Take their logo. I think they did actually send a cease and desist at one point. But he changed the logo. We did that together for about a year. And for me, it was just, I had this envisioned in my head that I was going to, get discovered, like Source or whoever was going to be like, oh, this photographer is great. Like, let's hire her. And so ultimately what happened, like me and him kind of fell out at a certain point, or we weren't seeing eye to eye on where we wanted to go with it. So I had finished I was doing the creative side. He was doing the business side, which is where the conflict came in, because he would be like, yeah, they only paid $400 for an ad, and I would find out they paid like $700.
Right.
We were supposed to be splitting the money, and Anyway, that's how that all kind of unraveled. But we had gotten to a point where he said, I'm not going to do this anymore. And I had already finished the next issue. And so Mercedes was one of our street team people, and she was like, well, why would you stop? Like, why don't you just change the name? I mean, you got
magazine's already done.
You know everybody. You got all the advertisers. And so that's kind of where it started from, because we did already have a base of, like, we had a lot of local companies that would advertise. And so originally, even the early issues of Ozone, it's like Orlando music or Florida music, which is very heavily, Latino influence. You got a lot of Caribbean influence. So we had a lot of reggae artists, reggaeton, like it was kind of everything happening.
What year was the first issue?
2002.
Who was on the cover?
Red Dog.
Red Dog.
Yes, he's from Orlando. He had a
my
Sunshine
Orlando
State.
My Orlando hip hop encyclopedia goes to Kasky. What's the guy's name? I will never
Smiles and South
with
Star?
a street. Yeah, Smiles and South Star. The dude who was in jail with the dreads. He cut him off. Fuck. I play shit in the club. The song's called "Pussy N Words."
Wow, that's a new one to me. I mean, like there was a lot of groups that had like a couple records.
But yeah, Smiles and South Star.
I mean, Kaya actually shot her first album cover in our office.
Is Kaya from Orlando?
She's from Tampa.
Okay, that's what I thought. Yeah, I heard, yeah, she burned a lot of bridges.
They don't really claim her.
Yeah. Everybody in Tampa I know was they just have terrible things to say about Kaya, and I'm like, Jesus. Like, I guess.
Well, I printed
Whoop.
I printed all her mugshots in one of our early issues because she had been arrested like 20-something times. And I just thought it was a great visual. So we printed all the mugshots. And I remember, I don't know if it was officially her people, but like somebody ran up on me in the club and was like, rah,
Yo,
rah,
what the
rah,
fuck?
you know. And then she ended up, I think she put it out as a mixtape cover or something like that.
Hey.
So
You did her a favor,
hey.
that's for sure. Yeah, it's crazy because like
I thought she was a cool rapper. I mean,
she had an iconic record. It still was
They
getting
still play that in
sampled
clubs
and getting
and-
for sure. I was gonna say like Florida hip hop in 02, 03, that's like there's really not like right now we think of Florida hip hop and it's just I mean, it's so massive. The state has blown up between. I mean, we just had like 3 rappers from Tallahassee alone at the BT radio
Well,
room.
I just happened to be in the right place at the right
Right.
time when you had, I mean, T-Pain from Tallahassee.
Yep.
I mean, Pitbull, Rick Ross, Flo Rida, Khaled.
It was kinda
I mean,
just
Khaled
like-
was a big influence
Right.
when we ultimately ended up doing the Ozone
Because he has so
Awards.
much roots in Orlando. Him and Nasty were in Orlando, right?
Well,
Early
Khaled
on.
used to do, or maybe he still does. Khaled used to do the Temple, his birthday bash every year. So every artist you could think of would come out, and it would just be like really organic. Like, you know, Diddy grabs a mic and hands
Right.
it to, you know, Jadakiss or whoever.
Right,
It was
right,
just
right.
like this big party. So when we ultimately did the Ozone Awards, I had Khaled come do the opening set because that was the inspiration was like his. I was like, just do what you do at your, you know, at your birthday bash.
Right.
So we had like Trick Daddy and Pitbull and Ross, and this is when Ross had Hustling. So I was just there when a lot of them had been bubbling for a while and were kind of on the precipice of just breaking through. And so when I started interviewing a lot of people like a Pitbull would talk about how it was a blessing that he had never got signed earlier. He was
Right.
like, well, the New York labels, you know, they ignored me for so long. It forced me to like build up this fan base. I traveled around, I did all these shows.
Right.
So, you know, artists today, it's almost like it's too easy. Like they could be very young.
Yeah, they don't have-
if they get the right record, then they're immediately
They're in the
just-
game right away without a
so
lot
they
of
don't
the
have that history of the struggle to talk
traveling,
about.
you know, staying in shitty hotels, going to a radio station in the morning to just try to, you know, for sure.
That's all part of the experience. So
100%.
So a lot of the artists were experiencing the same thing I had experienced on the journalism side because I had tried to. I mean, I did some stuff here and there, like for the Source and you know some little freelance stuff. But there reached a certain point where I was kind of like, oh, like we're actually onto something here with this magazine. I don't need to try to go work for a New York magazine. So a lot of artists like Pitbull or Pimp C would talk about the same experience they had where they were trying so long to get accepted by New York and it just never happened. And finally they were like, all right, I'll just do it my own way, make my own.
Did the traditional magazines at the time, were they hating or did they embrace you? Because at the time there's like this weird, like, I don't know, man. There's like the Source really turned into like a weirdo magazine for a little bit. And then, you know, obviously Elliot Wilson was running it up, running circles around him at XXL for a sec. And
You know,
it felt like such a
I have
competitive
some-
space.
I have some funny stories about that. I mean, and so we're moving a little forward. Like by this time, you know, 2005-ish. Like
You guys have been up and running for a while.
I'm realizing like there's really some money in this.
Right.
And I think what showed me too, like the early issues, I'd send like a box to like Montgomery, Alabama
Right.
or something, and I'd send like 4 boxes to Miami, thinking like, oh, Miami's a bigger
Right.
market. And people in Miami, I mean, they liked it, but they're kind of like they have 3 radio stations and they have
Miami's
they
a
have
booming city.
places to go. Like the
Right.
artists there don't really need
Right.
a platform, whereas I would get like 100 calls from Montgomery with all these,
With all these
DJs,
artists, yeah.
artists, people that want to get down. So I started to see there was a market, and the South is full of Tallahassee, Jacksonville, Birmingham.
sure,
I mean,
yeah.
there's so many like
Tennessee,
sort of
all that,
mid-level
yeah.
markets that just don't have, at that time they
Right.
didn't have social media. So if there's an artist they're trying to get on, they don't have YouTube to show
Right.
people what they look like. So they would advertise in the magazine. So I saw that there was a real market there. So Elliot Wilson, saw him yesterday, a couple days ago. So, I mean, we're cool and stuff, but he's always been one to kind of like take shots at different people. So funny story about him. Well, I remember at one point I would go to New York and I would like drop off magazines places. So I stopped by XXL one time just to drop off some magazines, and he was like the only person in the office. I think it was like 8 o'clock in the evening or whatever. And I just remember he said, "Oh, you're not from around here, are you?" Like, and to me, it was like people in New York kind of, I don't know if he meant it to be like I took it a certain way. I don't know that he meant it that way. But to me, if I ask somebody where they're from and they say like Houston or the Bay or LA, like I kind of have a sense of like where they're from and what kind of, environment they're dealing with. And I felt like New Yorkers had this idea like you're either from New York or you're not. And it's one or the other. You know what I mean? Yeah. That's kind of how I perceived it. Was like, oh, you're not from here, so you're just, I don't really care where you're from. I don't know where you're from.
You're not from
here.
Just
not from here.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I took it. But later on, like maybe a couple years down the road, we had never been able to get a distribution deal. Not that I don't know that I put a whole lot of effort into it, but it was always like a street kind of thing.
Like you're getting your own printing done and you're
everything. We load up the van, drive to
Yeah, because I would see your guys' stuff at like record stores, like small like independent record stores. Like I think I might have saw it at like Tower Records.
We eventually did get a distribution deal, so I had been trying. There's really, at that time, there might have been like 2 or 3 distributors, but there's really only like one big distributor, which is Curtis, and they did XXL and Source and all that. And I had been.
Who would have thought they were the same distributor? So they were they were distributing both.
They were distributing like any newsstand you go to, pretty much goes through Curtis, at least from what I recall. And I had sent them copies of the magazine. They sent us like this standard like rejection letter or whatever, and. I hired a consultant to try to harass them and try to get us a distribution deal. But I said something about XXL in my editorial, and Elliot responded. Like he put a little liner, something about Ozone or whatever. And so I copied it and sent it.
Because he would write his little like.
He was always taking shots at the sauce and like all this stuff. But he said something about like, oh, go down south with the ozone, or like it was something that could be interpreted as like a diss back to us. So I copied it, sent it to the distributor. And I don't know if that was what did it or the consultant or whatever, but we got a distribution deal. And so it kind of showed.
So shout out to him.
I felt like, if you're distributing this product and they're like, if you're battling with somebody, they're an equal, basically. So, but the Source, I mean, I met Boo Rosario pretty early on. He was a music editor or one of the music editors at the Source, and he did the photo galleries in the back. So I started sending him stuff, and I would be super excited if I got like, my little name.
So you were getting your pics sometimes in the back of the Source, just on the photography.
I would send them like hundreds of pictures, and they might pick, 2 or 3 might make it. But I'd be excited about that. And I met Kim. And shout out to Kim. She was the editor at that point. She had come down to Miami, I think, to shoot Trina or something. And I would kind of throw it out there like, you guys should hire me to work this out. Like, I didn't feel like anyone took that super seriously, but they did start giving me like a little assignment here and there, and that's when they were, I think, starting to fall apart as far as the on the business side, and then also the Eminem thing was going on.
Right.
It was a lot happening at that point.
It was a lot happening.
And then Benzino left me the voicemail. I don't know if you remember that, but that was.
I don't. What? You know what? Listen, my brain is so hip hop fried at this point. Please catch me up, because I'm sure
Oh gosh, I mean we're skipping a lot, but the Benzino.
Well, we're gonna go back.
All right. The Benzino voicemail. Oh my gosh. So I'd been freelancing for the Source like here and there. And I think they owed me, it might have been like $1,800 or something like that, which, again, like I'm young at the time.
That's, like, $1,800.
That's definitely rent and a car note. Like that's,
for sure. That's a serious chunk of change, especially back then.
Yeah. And so I think it had been maybe like a year. Right. And, I had like emailed the, corporate office, nobody's responding. And I think I didn't have the concept of what was going on there at the time. Like they were kind of falling apart.
Right.
So
the house was burning.
My little 1,800 or whatever it was not really a priority. But I ran into Dave somewhere in Miami, and shout out to Dave. He, I respect what he did with the Source, and
and he's got his podcast.
He's got a Breakbeat
network that's doing
network.
Well.
He's
great bounce
still
back
in the
for
game,
him,
so.
For sure.
Yeah, I always have respect for Dave and what he accomplished with the Source. But I do think, there was like some missteps in the later years. But on this particular occasion, like I had run into him somewhere in Miami, and I think I was feeling myself a little bit because they let me in the club before him. Like we both were.
You're like, yo, you're in Miami.
Well, I was at the time, like that was like like everybody knew me. You know, the doorman was always like, oh, the white girl with the camera, let her in, you know. And so they let me in.
Right.
They let us both in, but they let me in first, and I was like, oh, okay. You know.
Check us out. Yeah.
Yeah. But I was trying to be respectful. I was like, you know, hey, is there somebody I can contact at corporate? Like I've been trying to get this invoice paid and nobody's got back to me.
Yeah, like hey.
And he was like maybe smoking weed or something. And he just kind of blew me off. Mm-hmm. Like, you know, just didn't really answer me and went inside. And so I was like feeling some kind of way. And so we did this year-end issue that was like the year-end awards. Mm-hmm. I mean, we might have even took that idea from the source. I don't know. But it was supposed to be like humorous awards we were giving to people. So at the time, the talk around the industry is about how Benzino is extorting Dave. And, you know, I've read Selma Hines' book and you know, heard, I think, I don't know if Kim's book was out yet, but, you know, this has been out for a while. Like, people who work there have been talking about this. So I said something about Benzino extorting Dave, and then trying to be like a proper journalist, I said, you know, disclaimer here, they owe me money. That's why I'm talking shit. And sent it to print. And when you do a magazine, I mean, you write something, and by the time it actually reaches the public, it's 6 weeks later, at least. Mm-hmm. So 6 weeks later, I'm just sitting at home at like midnight, and this number I don't know calls me and is like, fuck you, hangs up. And I'm like, okay. Somebody calls back. So it was Dave called me the first time. Second call is Benzino. Mm. And, you know, it took me like a minute, honestly, to even remember. I'm like, what did I...
Yeah.
I'm like, what is this about? And then I'm like, oh, yeah, I forgot about that thing I wrote. And so Benzino cussed me out for like, it was like a 90-minute call. Like, he seems like the kind of guy. He has a short temper.
To scream a lot, for sure, yeah. Because I've seen the way he just unravels online rather quickly with people.
So I'm like scrambling, running around the house. Like, I'm like, I know I have a recorder here somewhere. Like, I got to record this. You know, he's just.
Yeah, going off.
Well, it was kind of funny because it was like, very like if you're gonna insult somebody and hurt them, there has to be like a little kernel of truth in it. But it was like he was like, you're just a fat bitch. And I mean I weighed like 110 pounds or something. I was like, who are you talking to?
He's like, you fat blind bitch. And you're like, I don't wear glasses.
It was just a lot of really generic like stuff you might throw at a female. Just, you know, I'm gonna send this, you know,
it's like he had like an insult board for women, and he just throwing darts at it. It was like, you're a whore.
But I remember I was on AOL Instant Messenger. Mm-hmm. You know, everybody would. Yeah,
everybody was on AIM.
Whatever. And so I was on the computer after this call, and DJ Quest popped up from Fort Myers, and we were just talking. I was like, "You won't believe like what just happened to me."
He's still there too, right? Quest is still in Fort Myers. Yeah, shout out to Quest.
Yeah, shout out to Quest. He was always our Fort Myers connect. But I was like, "You won't believe this call I just got," and he's like, "Oh, I wish you had recorded that. I put it on my mixtape." I'm like, "Yeah, I know." And so I go to the office like a few days later or whatever and check the voicemail, and he had actually called there first and left this voicemail. So he called me a slut monkey.
A slut monkey.
Which I don't even know what that means.
I'm taking that.
But
Cyrus, you slut monkey.
Yeah, so I sent it to Quest. I'm like, here you go, put it on your mixtape.
Put it on the mixtape.
So he sends it to Tony Neal, who had the core DJs.
Core DJs, still thing.
And Tony sends it to
everybody.
200 DJs.
Wow.
And next thing I know, like Funkmaster Flex is calling me. We got to get you on the air to talk about this because I think they had.
Yeah. I feel like everyone had a situation with Benzino at a certain point in time.
Yeah, so it definitely made the rounds because I remember not too long after that I went overseas with Trey Songz, and we were in like, I want to say Denmark or Sweden or something, and I would always bring magazines, give it to the DJ. So I go up to the DJ booth and give the guy a magazine. He didn't even speak English, and he was like, "Slut monkey," like he knew who I was. So
wow,
I wasn't mad about it. And we did kind of like squash things at a certain point after that. So
yeah. I mean,
it is what it is, but it's a great story though.
So the first issue's, what was the guy's name? Red Dog.
Yeah.
Red Dog. Okay.
We had Smiles and South Star.
Shout out to Smiles and South Star.
I tried to Photoshop them large above the city of Orlando.
Yeah, they had some joy.
Rudimentary.
Those guys are Orlando legends for sure. Mm-hmm. What was the first issue of the magazine that you realized? Well, how about this? Was there like a pivotal issue for you guys that really like changed the trajectory of like, oh, we could do this for real and get some real money off of this? Or I'm sure there was momentum that led up to it, but do you remember what that issue was?
I think there were a couple. I mean, we did, and definitely some of the stuff we did was modeled after like the Source, or just taking ideas from other. I mean, there's nothing new under the sun. You know, they were imitating Rolling Stone basically, but they would do the Power 30 issue. I don't know if this is where I got the idea. Honestly, don't remember. But we did a Florida Power issue, which Khaled was on the cover with Dogman, who's a promoter from Orlando. Dogman's a character, and he was another one that had kind of like given me a lot of street game, because I'm like this young white girl. I don't know anything, you know. Like him and Mert, my original partner, they're like street hustler dudes. Like they're not like illegal stuff, but they're gonna get money any way possible. And so I learned a lot like just hanging out with them. But Khaled was on the cover with Dogman, the first Florida Power issue, and so it put me in a position where I was traveling all around the state to interview like the 30 most powerful people. So I met all these program directors and DJs.
Did Orlando Davis make the list?
Yes.
Shout out to
Tampa PD, right?
Yeah.
I'm almost certain he was on the list. Yeah.
What about Chris John? DJ Chris John.
I don't know if he was around back
Baby
then.
Khaled.
He might have come on the scene like shortly after that. Definitely Nasty and Pro Style were like, you know, mainstays.
Shout out to Pro Style, Orlando. For sure.
The early days.
No,
I remember Khaled had come to do the photo shoot, and we didn't have I think we were gonna have him like lifting a weight or something, like Florida Power, and we didn't have one, so he was just like posing with like a broomstick or something like that.
Did you guys Photoshop the weight in there?
We did, yes.
I like that.
I was good with the Photoshop back in the day.
Hey,
I was just telling somebody this story. That was actually pre Ozone. I was doing like graphic design stuff, and this guy brought me a pass. He had a pass for a Jay-Z party. It was like a Tracy McGrady Jay-Z party, and he said, "Can you duplicate this?" Because it was like an old school like red paper
so you were
with laminate.
bootlegging the passes?
Absolutely. So I made like 10 for him and made one for myself. And
back in the day, like I feel like if you were good at Photoshop back in the day, that was a fucking career. Like nowadays, I feel like everyone you pull your phone out.
I still get paid to this day. People will ask me to Photoshop stuff for them.
It's just crazy though, because like I just feel like it was almost like making beats. It was so hard back in the day. So it's like now, like AI could do a graphic if I really wanted him to. Like
it's a lot easier now.
No, sure. Did you? Because
but you had pivotal issues. I mean, Florida Power was one. We did an issue early on where it was like the sex issue. I might have took that idea from the Source.
Who's on the cover of that?
I want to say it was Jackie O.
Shout out to Jackie O.
I think it was Jackie O.
Was she on Slip and Slide?
But we did a Groupie Confessions column that I don't remember how that. Oh no, I do remember how that got started. I'm not going to put her on blast though, but I happen to know a lot of friends of friends would have like little rapper stories, and I was like, hey, tell me the story anonymously. We put it in the magazine, and we did one about Jay-Z. And there was always a disclaimer like, hey, I wasn't there.
We don't know if this is true.
I can't guarantee that this actually happened.
Right.
But it was generally people that I kind of like knew through a friend to be like somewhat credible. But I think it was the New York Post had picked it up. And, you know, you talk about Jay-Z's sex life. That's like New York headline news.
That is pretty big.
I thought it was great. I'm like, oh, we got all this press, you know.
I was going to say like...
Could have been a better topic, but... I mean, you know.
We always would hear, like, back in the day, like, the Source would take money from labels for, like, ratings, certain stuff. Did you guys ever get paid to do covers or back covers?
The cover was always for sale.
So the cover was always for sale.
I never thought that was controversial until, like, way after the fact. People would say that was controversial somehow. The way that I viewed it, and this was... Mert started that. I would have never thought to do that, but... Honestly, the magazine would have never survived if we hadn't sold the cover. Like, that's what people were willing to pay for.
Who are some of the people who paid for covers?
But at the same time, everyone paid for a cover.
Everybody. So if somebody was on the cover, they cut a check.
I want to say there was no one who ever was on the cover without paying for it. There may have been one that I'm forgetting, but it was the same as. I mean, first of all, we were not a newsstand publication, not primarily. It was a promotional. We gave these away, tens of thousands.
No, for sure, yeah.
So it was kind of like a label doing. I mean,
I just remember like hundreds and hundreds of pictures of people just holding up Ozone.
I mean, it's like a label doing. Labels putting together a marketing campaign. They might do a Gangsta Grills with drama.
All right, listen. I'm on vacation. We're cutting commercials live from Mexico. We're on the beach, damn it. So check this out, man. Don't forget, it's summertime. You gotta go to BlueChew.com. Promo code Bootleg. All right? That's gonna get you a free month supply. Same active ingredient as Viagra and Cialis. Of course, the best part about Blue Chew is it gets your dick super hard. What are we talking about? All right, if you're dealing with erectile dysfunction due to stress, due to, I don't know, whatever is going on, mentally it happens too. You can get that ED fixed. Blue Chew, promo code Bootleg. Free month supply, BlueChew.com. Also want to shout out to the family at Odd Socks, baby. That's right. Shout out to Odd Socks. They got all kind of crazy new licenses. They just dropped, Transformers. They got the Hasbro licenses now. Power Ranger socks. Of course, they just did the Coca-Cola earlier this year. Of course, the most comfortable socks in the world. Go to oddsocksofficial.com. Use that promo code Bootleg and save 20% off. Oddsocksofficial.com. We got to
in our defense too, it wasn't like just anybody could. There still had to be like
some sort of level of yeah.
And then when we did the features, it wasn't. It was a little different from the way that a feature might be presented in other publications. Mm-hmm. It was kind of. We would generally just do a Q&A. So I'm not putting it out there and saying you're the great. I'm not giving you my opinion. This is the greatest rapper ever. I'm just telling you. This is what Jeezy said. Yeah, it was like a Q&A.
Man, if YouTube was a thing back then, that shit would have been crazy. Right. I bet you have some. You probably have so much stuff in the archives, right?
I wish I had videotaped more.
Because
I don't have a lot of video. I have a ton of
audio.
I license. Photo. Yeah, I do have some audio. I have a ton of photos. I mean, you've probably seen my stuff on like Unsung or Behind the Music or Hip Hop Evolution. Like a lot of those documentary series I've licensed stuff for. I have a lot of early content.
Oh, that's dope.
I'm gonna put out another book with my photography. It's like halfway
Is it just a photo book?
It's a photo book with kind of like stories, like
little
stories,
cliff notes about what happened.
Absolutely.
It's crazy because you mentioned Pitbull earlier, and I remember when Pitbull first came out, he was like rapping, like he had a song.
I still have old Pitbull records online.
Well, he had a song with Nas that I don't think got dropped, but it was like on Napster called Imagine. It was like sampling like John Lennon. It was so fire. But it's so crazy to see like.
I'm guessing they couldn't clear that.
I'm assuming not, right? But like, did you like being around Pitbull so early? Did you have any inclination that like he would end up being such a worldwide superstar? Like when you Google Pitbull, the dog doesn't even come up when you Google Pitbull.
That's funny.
He comes up first. It's like
at least he spelled it correctly.
That's how famous he is.
I can't spell like ludicrous and fabulous. I can't spell the word. You spell
like the rapper. Yeah. Like how do you spell ludicrous? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean Pitbull was always just a hustler. Like in certain people, when you see that work ethic, you're like, they're gonna make it. And I was a fan of the music. Like I remember hearing him. I was driving over the causeway like 4:00 in the morning, leaving the beach, and he was on the radio freestyling, or maybe it was recorded. I don't know, but like "Welcome to Miami," his little freestyle. And I was like, where can I find this? Like, how can I find this rapper? And as soon as I met him, I was like, yeah, he's gonna make it because I've told this story before. I was supposed to interview another artist who was, I want to say he was signed to Jive, another artist. Like, he just got like a big label deal and it was like all over the radio. Like, this is the next big thing for Miami. Right. And I'm waiting for him to show up. I think it was like the second time and he just didn't show up. And I was on a deadline, and I'm like, what am I going to put in this magazine? I have these pages I got to turn in. Right. And Pitbull's manager at the time, Big Teach, was like in our adjoining office. We were all in this like music industry kind of central office in downtown Miami. And I go over and say, hey, Teach, like how quick could Pitbull get here? I got to get this, turned into the printer. And Pit was like, oh, I'll be there in 10 minutes. And we went downstairs, did a photo shoot on the beach, which incidentally, that photo is in the Smithsonian now, which is crazy. Or it's part of the Smithsonian collection.
Wow.
And we did an interview and sent it to press. And so to me, if you're an artist and you're trying to get on, like that's the attitude.
That's the attitude to have.
Like you got to be, if you need somebody to come drop a freestyle, like
listen, that just happened. I just had Jadakiss at my table, and this kid from Phoenix, this amazing rapper Merkham, snuck his way into the BET media room. So he was telling me how much I was like, who do you like this up and coming? He's like, man, I just like that real rap. So I was like, go get Merkham's. I called him. So he ran.
I was like, where you at? He's like, around the corner. I was like, come over here right now.
So I handed him the mic and he freestyled for Jadakiss and killed it. It was dope. Now he's got that
that's
moment.
what it takes,
For sure. 100%. No, it's crazy because I think back then there was Ozone, and then I feel like the West Coast, we kind of had like Murder Dog.
Yeah, Murder Dog, yeah.
Murder Dog was like...
They were even like a little more grimier than us.
They were grimy as fuck. Murder Dog was crazy. And it was almost...
I like Murder Dog, but I feel like I was trying to make an effort to be like a little more... I don't want to say mainstream, but you know...
Yeah, when your magazine's called
like
Murder Dog...
A little more polished, maybe.
Yes, 100%.
I was real serious about the editing, like typos and the presentation of it. I wanted, even if the subject matter was like street and like authentic, I wanted it to like look a certain way.
What was the first Ozone Awards like? What year was it?
2006.
Okay, so this is 4 years after the magazine launches in Orlando. Okay.
Yeah. I just remember that honestly, there's so much I don't remember from those weekends because I literally did not sleep. Like the Ozone Awards, definitely in Orlando and definitely in Houston, I'm talking like 4 days without sleep. You start to hallucinate things. Like when I woke up the morning after, I remember looking around the room and seeing like wristbands and stuff. And I really thought it had been a dream. I was like, that we didn't actually that
tomorrow,
didn't actually happen yet. That was a crazy day. I mean, I gotta say that David Banner really saved that show because he was the host.
Legend.
And I was in like it was just so much that happened that weekend because it wasn't just the awards. We did a 4-day, or maybe it was 3 days at that time. We teamed up with TJ's DJs, which was
shout out to TJ Chapman.
Shout out to TJ. And I couldn't have pulled that off without him. I mean, he had a lot more in terms of structure, and he had staff and volunteers. I've always been, for better or worse, like I do everything myself. I'm not really great at delegating stuff.
TJ's from Tallahassee too, right?
He's from Tallahassee, yeah. And that first weekend, like we had paid for this whole hotel, and they told us back then, like, oh, well, we're going to be doing some renovations or whatever, but it'll be done by the time your event comes around. They literally brought a bulldozer in the lobby of the hotel 3 days before the Ozone Awards, and the whole lobby was gone. Like they took out the escalator. It was dirt.
Jesus.
And so I get a call from one of our staff like 3 days before the awards. I think you should come see the hotel where we're having our event in 3 days. It was just so much that went wrong that weekend to the point where by the time the awards come around, I'm like, how are we going to pull this off? You know, and I'm like, it was just so much going on. Back then I had a BlackBerry, and like, you know, the messages were coming in so fast. I was getting like the next day I got a message from Ludacris manager, like, we're at the airport, where is the car? Like, I'm getting messages from the day before. Like, that's how crazy it was. And
who performed the first year?
Literally everybody.
Everybody.
I remember being backstage, and all the pictures from that night, it's funny because I'm in like a white t-shirt because I never even had time to like change in anything, and I hadn't slept, so I'm just like all over the place. But I was kind of freaking out backstage. Like, then the guy who was supposed to prepare our video packages, like, the nominees are he kept assuring me like, oh yeah, it's great, it's coming along. He just disappeared, so we had no video presentation. So I'm freaking out like the day of the event, and Banner was the host, and he kind of like grabbed me and corralled me like in a corner somewhere, and he was just like, you got to get it together, because if you look like everything's fine, people are going to think everything's fine. If you look like everything's fucked up, people are going to be like, what am I doing here? So I, held it together. He hosted it with, and Trina as well. David Banner and Trina hosted the first show. So I had asked Khaled to do the opening set. So Khaled brought, everybody, Rick Ross did Hustlin'. Actually, Plies opened the show. And nobody in the industry knew who Plies was. But he was like the hottest thing in the streets in Florida. Like, he had just dropped.
Plies from Fort Myers, right?
He is from Fort Myers, yeah. And I remember like Pimp C asking me about him after the show, like, yo, can I get his mixtape? Can I get his number? So we helped him out a lot with that. That was like a big look for him.
Wow.
So Plies performed, Rick Ross, Cool and Dre came out, Trick Daddy, Pitbull, T-Pain, and then we had like Young Jock, Pimp C and Bun B for the first time since Pimpa got out. Jeezy came out on stage with them. Honestly, Wayne was supposed to be the headliner. Like, Wayne performed last, but people thought it was over after Pimp and Bun. They were like, we can't top that.
You can't top UGK.
Ludacris performed. I think he was filming. I think it's on his MTV Diary.
Wow. I was going to say, that's like peak Luda. That's like Luda.
We had, I got texts afterwards. I think, Bun was there, but I think Lil Jon didn't make the show, but he was texting me afterwards, and like Bun was texting me like, I can't believe you, or no, Bun got up and accepted their award, and he was like, honestly, I didn't know if I was going to come to this thing. Basically, like, I thought it was going to be just some...
I'm glad we came.
I mean, it was hood. Like, it wasn't polished at all. But he was like, this is for the South. Like, I'm glad we came. And, people were texting me like, you like to get a text from Lil Jon, like, wow, I heard that what you pulled off was amazing. Like, I can't really top that. So that was a crazy time. And
how many award shows did you guys do?
3.
3 of them. And then, so kind of take me to what ends up...
And I learned that I hated organizing events.
Yeah, live events are tough, especially with so many It's different to do like a concert and there's one guy performing, but the variables that are involved in pulling together travel, hotel...
I had no idea that when, they do the BET Awards and they do the Source Awards, they have production companies that do this for a living.
And you were the production company.
I was the production company, and I would never put myself through that.
Oh, I can imagine.
But it was some good times.
Because you're talking to all the managers.
Miami, I had Wayne on this phone, management arguing with the security, didn't want to let him in with his bags or whatever. I had Jeezy here with 100. I need 100 tickets because he's beefing with Pimp C. It was just
I forgot about the Jeezy Pimp C thing. I remember that. Wow.
Pimp C did not come to the Ozone Awards because of that. Somebody wise talked him out of coming because he was texting me like, you're going to have blood on the floor. And it was, I did write about it in the book. But I'm glad that
it's right here.
I'm glad that was resolved with no bloodshed. But yes,
well,
my 700-page book on Pimp C does touch on these fun times at the Ozone Awards.
I was going to ask you, what was, because we know about the legendary Source Award drama and, BT Award drama, and was there ever anything that popped off?
Oh yeah.
What was
not to the Source Awards level, but that first year when we had all the Miami artists or all the Florida artists perform, Trick was the final performance, and I think there was something, I don't know, something with him and Ross or whatever, but he ended his set like, there's only one mayor in Miami and y'all are my proteges or whatever, and he threw the mic down. And so they had like a little something backstage or whatever.
Ross has had some somethings backstage with a few people.
Yeah.
So was that the worst that it ever got, where there was like an altercation? Because look, when you have everyone under the same roof, and it's like you said, you're the production company. So this is not like MTV, and there's like you're handling everything. So like,
well, Houston was the craziest. We had the fire marshal trying to shut us down, and the riot police, like they had them lined up outside. Who was
attending at the same time where you were most worried about with Houston?
Well, I wouldn't say that I was worried. It was just a lot going on. But Trey punched Mike Jones. I didn't actually see it. And
Trey the Truth punched Mike Jones at the Ozone Awards?
And then Mike still came up. I mean, to his credit, Mike still came up and did whatever presentation he was supposed to do with the little Band-Aid or whatever in his face. So I don't really know what that was about. I'm not sure what they were.
That's a professional.
I'm not sure what the issue was, but I respect him for that. You know.
Hey, that was that. So, Houston had their moment. They had their Swisher House.
It was the right time to do it in Houston. Well, we did the Pimp C tribute too, so we had all these artists come out and do Pimp C covers at that show. You
know, I got to ask you, because obviously you were so close with Pimp C. You obviously wrote his book. If you, like you said, 700 pages. If you ever want to know anything about Pimp C,
it's in there.
What like how many phones did he have? Because I had always heard this dude was like very into cell phones. Like he had like a lot of phones, or it was like something like he just like.
You know, I don't remember him having more than one. I remember that he really liked he had like the flip phone.
Right.
Like I did a photo shoot with him when he had first got out of prison. I think he really wanted I think his mom talked about this. I remember his mom talking about how he really wanted a Razor. Like that was the thing when he was locked up. He wanted a Motorola Razor. Was it Motorola?
Yeah.
So when he got out, they had the Motorola for him, and so he wanted to do a photo shoot with it. Actually, well, what happened was I had been corresponding with him. I interviewed him while he was in prison, and so I hear that he's getting out, and I'm like, should I go? You know what I mean? And I didn't really have I think it's like a week out. So I'm like, I don't really have any way to reach him and be like, do you want me to be there? Because, some artists coming out of prison, I'm like, do they want the media there? Do they want to be with their family? And so I think I had called Bun, and Bun was like very like non-committal, like didn't really give me an answer one way or the other. So I'm like, I'm always I'm just going to go for it, And I said, well, I'll go and I'll just hang back. If he doesn't want to take pictures, I just wasted a trip. It is what it is. But he did let me take pictures. But then he kind of called me a few days later and was kind of like, that's not how I want to be presented. He just come out of prison. He wants the car and the jewelry and the photo. So he's like, come back to Houston. We'll do a photo shoot. So he had got the Bentley at that point. He got all the jewelry. He's got the razor. And so he's posing with the phone. Like every shot, he's got the, phone out, hanging out the car with the phone in his hand. Like, so that's a great, and this is a good story too. This was, or I don't know, it's kind of a bad story. I did this whole photo shoot with him at a video shoot in Miami. It was R. Kelly. Was it R. Kelly? T-Pain, R. Kelly video shoot. And we did this whole shoot with him with the mink. And it was supposed to go to Vibe magazine. And I had sent Vibe like one picture, like a little small, here's what we got today. Mm-hmm. Drive to Atlanta, go to the T.I. release party, leave all my luggage in the car like a rookie, come back out of the club, and
everything's gone.
The whole photo shoot is just disappeared.
What?
So all I have is the one little picture that I emailed to Vibe. So that's how I had an artist recreate
That's
it.
crazy.
But I wish I had a photo shoot. That would have been amazing.
How sweaty was he in Miami wearing that? Because I'd heard
that's a great question.
I heard a quote that he said that TV don't got temperature. Yeah,
I think that's from my book. I don't know, or maybe it came somewhere else first. But I'm sure he had to have been pretty hot. I don't know.
Yeah, it's crazy because you've obviously, for you, like, being able to kind of tell like the Pimp C story in a way that is very comprehensive, very thorough. Do you kind of look at yourself as like somebody who is like a historian of hip hop at this point? Because you were there for so much of an era that I think like now we look back. I always tell people like, especially in sports, I'm like, you don't realize like what we're watching or what we're a part of or what we're seeing on TV. Like you don't know about, like, you're not going to appreciate LeBron until 10 years from now when he's gone, And I feel like that era of Southern hip hop and everybody who came out of that, who's still relevant, who are still, you mentioned Rick Ross and Jeezy and all these people who are just still staples of our culture. Like, but you were like in the just front row of the like really the beginning of all of this stuff. So do you kind of
I'm glad I was there. Yeah. I do consider myself a historian. Not just for hip hop, but just I'm into history, period.
Right.
I really look at not only our time period, but just, I have all kinds of weird theories about like, even just how we live, like our lifestyles. Like people did not always live
this way
like we live. I've been on some other, like I'm off adventuring, like hiking, and
right.
It just makes you think about different, people didn't always live like this.
Mm-hmm.
We don't really need like these big houses and cars and stuff. Like there's people who are totally satisfied.
I dive down so many van life YouTube rabbit holes where I'm just like interested in seeing how people live in a van.
So I live in a van. Did you know that?
Do you?
Yes.
You van life?
Half. I'm like 50% in. Sometimes I'm like, okay, I got to go to the BET Awards weekend and do the interviews and stuff. But yeah, I've just spent a week in Yosemite in my van. I love it.
Is it a van or a Sprinter?
It's not a Sprinter. It's a ProMaster. It's a cheaper Sprinter. Sprinter's out of my
budget. So your van is, because I'm into this because I've watched so many YouTube. So you have like solar panels?
I thought you brought that up because you knew that.
I had no idea.
So this is what happened. I've always been into traveling, but like 2020, I had all these trips, but like I had planned the whole year out.
Right.
And so I went to Cape Town, January 2020, go to Cape Town. I forget where I went in February, somewhere else. March, I go to Argentina, Chile. I was in Chile when COVID happened. It kind of, when I flew out of the U.S., it was like you kind of heard about something happening in China.
Right.
But so I'm in the middle of nowhere. Like you could only get service like once a day. So like every day I'm getting like a few texts, and my friends are like, "Things are getting canceled. You probably should come home."
Yeah, like I don't know if you're gonna get back in.
That's really what happened. So I was on one of the last flights back to Atlanta before they shut everything down. I got back to the airport and the airport is completely empty, and I'm like, what is going
Like,
on?
this is different.
This is the craziest. Drive on the freeway, like,
No
there's
one's
no
on.
cars. I'm like, so abruptly, I'm like, my whole year is just, I got to cancel everything. Like,
yeah.
what's going to happen? So I'm just bored watching,
Family.
going down this rabbit hole for like 2 weeks of YouTube videos. And I'm like,
The videos
you know
are so
what?
good.
I could do that.
Yeah.
Bought a cargo van. I'm like, okay, now I'm committed. Now I got to build this thing. So I built a camper van during
So in
COVID.
your van, do you have like the like little sink and a little like
Yes.
you could cook in there and
I learned so much. I mean, I feel like I could really build a house now. Maybe I couldn't, but yeah, I have solar panels. I have a whole desk. I have satellite internet. I have stove,
do you have
sink,
the
I have a shower.
do you have this the
I have a
Starlink?
Starlink.
Yeah.
I'm
Does the
not
Starlink
really-
work?
I'm not really Elon fan. Yes, the Starlink works. It does not work if there's trees. You have to have a clear
A clear
view of the horizon.
Wow.
And last year it didn't work past a certain. I went to the Arctic Ocean last year, and it didn't work past a certain.
How do you get to the Arctic Ocean?
I drove to the Arctic Ocean.
Where is that?
It's at the very top of the continent.
So you had to get
I
to,
sent my brother a
To, like, Canada?
location thing. Like, look at where I am.
So it's like the top of Canada?
Yes,
What the
it's
fuck?
called Tuktoyaktuk. There's only one place you could drive to the Arctic Ocean, and it's this little Indian. Well, I don't want to say Indian. They call it First Nation
Right.
in Canada. It's
Yeah, yeah.
Native American Canadians, and it's called a hamlet. They don't call it a city, but it was a very interesting place. I met some like some little girls came out and were talking to me. And,
Do you have a pet?
no,
Okay, I just got because you'll see these guys online. They always got a little dog with them. I'm
I've
like,
considered it. You know, dogs are not really welcome at all the parks because they tend to tear up the ecosystem. Is what they're very destructive to the ecosystem, is what I've been told. So I don't really want
so you're
pet to say
you're a nomad.
absolutely.
Nice.
Yes. So it took me a year and a half to build the van. So I mean, and by this time, like the world sort of started to return to normal,
Right.
and now I'm like, now I have like
Now I'm
a
in this
full-time
van.
job. I have to finish. It was a lot of work.
I can imagine.
You watch the YouTube videos and you're like, okay, cool, but
Those
that was a
YouTube videos make
3-month
it seem
time
so
lapse.
easy.
They
Right.
absolutely do. Yeah.
You'd be like, damn, this guy did this in 4 hours or something like.
It's a lot of work, but I think probably, I mean, the first one is the hardest because you're like, there's a learning
Right.
curve with everything. But
So you
I love it. Yeah.
Yeah, so you love it. So you're pretty much for you on a normal basis when like you're in town for BT Awards, right? That just happened, right? For you though, like on a
Now I do not do the van in cities. I will say that I'm not in the van in LA. If you're in a van in LA, you are just homeless. If you're in a van in
San Francisco,
you're
homeless.
homeless.
Yeah,
If you're in
Portland.
a van now if you're in like the desert in
Right.
Utah or if you're at the Arctic Ocean, then you're fucking cool because I spent the night at the edge of the Arctic Ocean watching the northern lights, cooked myself dinner and took a shower in the van that I built. That's peak like
That's amazing. Well, I was gonna ask you like
everybody doesn't get that though.
so
Some people
where's
are like, "Why would you
where's
do
the
that?"
where does the van stay?
Her name is Carmen Van Diego, by the
Okay.
way. She's a she.
Where does she stay?
She's a nomad, so she
Like, because you're obviously home base for you is the South. Is it Atlanta?
Atlanta, yeah.
So is the van just you got a spot? You got like a little.
No. That's a terrible drive I keep it out anywhere out west.
Okay.
I found an airport with
So do you
free
have
parking.
Do you have like an apartment?
But I have a house.
Okay, so you have a house.
I'm not totally down the rabbit hole.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's pretty sick. So you've seen some pretty.
But you know what? I don't know how much longer I'll keep it though. Because it's tempting to just be like, yeah, let me just.
Well, because you could probably sell that thing for a serious amount of change. Because people would rather not do what
I
you
would
did.
never sell the van, yeah.
Well, because people really aren't.
No, I'm talking about the house. If I was going to sell anything, I'd sell the house.
I mean, it's not a bad idea. It's not a bad idea. Yeah, I'm intrigued by the van life.
No, it is. I mean, it is nice to have a place to go back to that's permanent, for sure.
For sure. Keep some things.
But I think I could do the van life full time.
Full time.
If I really was like dedicated to it. But
You guys have seen some crazy shit, though. Just traveling the country.
let me think. Going to the Arctic Ocean was definitely crazy.
Has anyone tried to break in?
Come on now, don't bring that on.
I don't know. You're at a truck stop. There's the weirdos
No, like I
out
said,
here.
I won't go to San Francisco. I won't go to LA.
Right.
I'll leave it somewhere else and fly to the city. I don't do the big cities.
That's pretty cool.
So I mean, so far I'm not gonna say I haven't had any crazy experiences, but yeah, it's That's the two questions men ask about the van. Where's your weapon? Have you had sex in the van? Those are the two questions.
Do you have a weapon in there?
I'm not going to answer either.
You better have. I mean, some mace or something.
I did get I saw a cool front plate that this guy had that said, "If the van is rocking, don't come knocking." So I got one just because I thought it was cool.
Shout out to the van life.
How long was that drive to the Arctic Ocean?
It's a long drive. It depends on where you're starting from, obviously. But the road itself, it's an 18-hour dirt washboard road. It's terrible drive.
That sounds cool.
That's once you're all the way in northern Yukon. So the crazy thing is, I almost got stuck there. I did get stuck there, but there's one road, only one way up and down. And so I was driving up, and it's beautiful. The scenery is amazing, but it's quiet, but it's not quiet to the point where you could just stop your car and get out of the car. And it's also, you can't leave the road because it's permafrost. So the road is specially designed. So if you pull this heavy van off the road, you're going to just sink into the ground because it's permafrost. So you can't leave the road. You can't really get out of the car. So I'm this whole 18 hours, I'm I wish I have got my camera, my drone. I'm this is fucking beautiful. I can't even
get out and stop. Yeah.
So I get up there. It was amazing when I 60 degrees. I swam in the Arctic Ocean. Like I said,
how cold was that?
It really wasn't as cold as
you would think.
As I thought it would be.
Right.
I just swam in it just to be I swam in
the
Arctic Ocean.
I did. I came all this way. I might as well get in.
Spent the night, saw the northern lights. It's incredible up there because you're so far north. They're above you.
Right.
So I just was this all night, just watching the lights or whatever. So next day I started driving back down. And there's also ferry crossings. There's something about they can't support the bridges because of the permafrost or whatever. So you have to take ferries at certain points. So I'm on the ferry, and the guy in the ferry is "Hey, did you hear the bridge is closed?" And I'm "No." And he's "Yeah, the bridge is closed." So there's a bridge halfway. So it's mile or hour 9 of this 18-hour journey. And I guess there was a construction happening. This guy had his boom up on the construction truck, and he hit the bridge. So the Canadian government or whatever puts out this alert that's and you don't have service up there because the Starlink didn't work up there at that point. I think it does now, but there was one spot where I could get a signal, and so I get to this one spot that's a higher point or whatever, and check online, and it says bridge is closed for 30 days, and I'm yeah, I kind of can't really hang out I'm above the Arctic Circle, it's September, so I'm it turns really fast. It gets cold, and so I'm freaking out.
Definitely freaked out.
There was 20, maybe 20 of us in RVs and stuff that were above the Arctic Circle. So it was interesting. It was a throwback to the old days where you didn't have social media and internet and stuff like that. So if you see anyone driving down the road, you're "Hey, have you heard anything?"
Yeah.
Because there is a small town, so it's not you're just totally out. But they get their supplies from down there too. So they're "How are we going to get gas? How are we going to get food?"
That's crazy.
So it ended up being 3 days later. They had to have engineers come up from the big city and Whitehorse or whatever, and they analyzed is it safe. So we ended up getting to cross 3 days later. They had all these engineers out there, and they're one at a time, and they did all these calculations on if the bridge was, sturdy or not. So for 3 days, it was Labor Day weekend, actually. So Labor Day weekend, and it finally dawned on me, I'm this is my fucking dream. Why am I mad about this? I get this whole area to myself.
Right.
No cars. Yeah. So I got the drone out, and I'm driving everywhere.
That's fire.
I know it makes me sound like a nerd because most people will be
no, that's
not
dope.
into this, but I thought it was fucking awesome.
That's
so
sweet.
I got to spend my Labor Day weekend driving around the Arctic with my cameras and my drone, took all these cool pictures, and then they were "Go ahead, you can go home."
I like that.
That was probably my best van life adventure yet.
You obviously have a very close relationship with Jay Prince, who is, listen, he's a pioneer. We talk about pioneers. He kind of kicked off so much for so much of just everything we see now. When we think about Rap-A-Lot Records, and he kind of laid the blueprint on how to do this label thing for a lot of people. You helped him with his book. How did you and him end up becoming a point to where he could kind of confide in you and trust to kind of help with his story?
I mean, I've known Jay for a long time. I mean, definitely like 2005-ish when I started going out to Houston pretty heavy. This is when, Pimp C was coming out of prison, and he was doing a lot. I think Rap A Lot was through Asylum at that point.
Yeah, because
Asylum would send us a lot of work because they had
all the Southern shit. Yeah.
They had a lot of Texas artists were really having their moment, and that was one thing I kind of went into the history of that in the book. This ended up being just more than just Pimp C. It was kind of Southern rap in general. Actually, what happened was that Southwest Wholesale, which they started distributing rap because of UGK, it was like the first album that they actually distributed. It wasn't something they did before,
right? And
it showed them this could be a really profitable business model. So for all that time between, I want to say, early 90s and 2005, all these Texas artists had access to Southwest Wholesale, which was selling like hundreds of thousands of units without them being signed to a major. So, the Slim Thugs and, all these guys had access to a distribution outlet where they can make a lot of money and not have to go through a major. Certain things transpired, and honestly, it's been 8 years since I wrote this, so I don't remember all the specifics, but it's in the book. As far as on the business end, how Southwest fell apart, they went out of business, or I think they just went bankrupt. And so at that point, that's why all the Houston artists started to get signed around 2005, because now they didn't have a distribution
because they didn't have
outlet.
the distro, yeah.
So they had to go get deals, and that's why you saw this explosion of artists.
Yeah, Slim Thug was with
Texas.
Star Trek, and then Swishahouse was
right.
I mean, everybody. I feel like Asylum really had a Texas in a chokehold. Yeah.
But yeah, so I got to spend a lot of time with Jay around that time, just being in Houston. I mean, if you're in Houston, like you kind of have to, he's a part of everything out there. So
right. We've heard.
But to his credit, definitely. I mean, he would always kind of take me under his wing and just, he's not someone who's gonna, I want to say give you like a lot of instruction, but it's more like he'll just kind of let you watch the way that he handles
moves,
situations.
Right.
And that's how I like to learn anyway. Like I just like to observe. So he would allow me to kind of be around for a lot of business type situations and just kind of observe how he handles it. And so I learned a lot that way. And I don't know for a fact, if this was a factor in him putting out his book, but I did a chapter on Jay Prince in the Pimp C book.
Pimp C book, yeah.
And it's I probably went like a little left field with it. I mean, I definitely put a lot of extra context, but I just felt like it was a great story. And it also helps you understand what was happening the time when Pimp C got arrested. I believe it was 9 days earlier. There was a congressional hearing, or maybe it was the Senate. I don't remember. There were large government hearings about Rap A Lot.
Right. I remember hearing about that.
Because there was a huge DEA investigation. They were determined to find, and they couldn't find anything.
Yeah, and they were following him. And I mean, I remember he told a pretty crazy story on Joe Rogan. I was just like, yeah, it's pretty crazy. Yeah.
Yeah. So the Senate is part of Congress, right? I should know this.
Like, let's be clear. No, Congress and the Senate are different.
I know this isn't a politics.
No, Congress and the Senate are different. That's a part. They're the part of the judicial branch.
Congress is the Senate and the House.
But
So it's...
Yeah,
you're right.
The Senate hearing it was a congressional Senate hearing. I think I'm saying that correctly.
Yeah,
there's like a 300, it's like a 400 page transcript of that hearing is like the craziest thing I have ever found on the internet. And I read it all like, this is fucking amazing. I have to make this a chapter.
Jesus.
But when you understand, Pimp C at that time, he's beefing with Master P. He's running around talking a lot of shit. He's wearing a Rap A Lot piece. And the DEA has been investing, like they spent who knows how much money. They had all these agents on full-time payroll for like a whole summer trying to find something on Rap A Lot. So they're investing a lot of money. The federal government, the Houston police, they're investing a lot into try to find something on this company. And so Pimp C is representing this company. So he got in an altercation with a woman at a mall, and all he did was allegedly like flashed a pistol at her because she said something about Master P. Oh, I don't fuck with you, I fuck with Master P. And he showed her he had a pistol. In Texas, that's aggravated assault.
Really?
So he never touched her. She wasn't injured.
Right. It feels like
and she was a booster. Like she had a long history.
That feels like a non-Texas thing to be aggravated. I feel
mean,
like in Texas,
you can wave guns.
that's what I mean. I feel
yeah.
like I feel like in Texas they'll give you a tax break if you flash your gun.
Yeah, well now it is.
Back then it wasn't for sure.
Back then, well, he had really terrible timing. When you look at what was happening in the criminal justice system, mass incarceration, the DEA's investigating rap a lot, so it helps you understand how he ended up in prison over this relatively minor situation. But I say all that to say, my book came out, and then Jay, I believe, had done a draft of his book with Jasmine Waters, and so I think it may have prompted him, hey, if I don't tell my story, it's somebody else is going to tell it, and
you got to tell your own story. Yeah, you got to control your narrative.
So when I talked to him, I mean, the whole, Rap A Lot from the beginning has always been about doing it independent.
For sure.
Same as Ozone. So he's in a position where he could get a publishing deal and, get a check to just put it out through somebody else. And I said, well, that doesn't really fit your, the Rap A Lot spirit.
Not the Rap A Lot. That's not the Rap A Lot way.
So I had learned a lot about the distribution side doing my own book. Nobody wanted to give me a publishing deal for Pimp C. Everybody in New York publishers were like, who? What? Pimp? So I put it out myself, learned a lot. And so I basically helped him create a book publishing arm of Rap A Lot to put out the book.
Oh, fire!
Independently, so yeah. I that was a great. We had a great run doing promo and stuff for that. We came and did your show.
Yep. I was gonna say, is it because I think
we went and did the Daily Show. That was the highlight for me. I always wanted to go to the Daily Show.
With Trevor Noah, or was it John Stewart?
Noah, yeah.
Shout out to Trevor. I love Trevor Noah.
Yeah.
I don't know who's gonna do it now. Who knows?
Actually, it was BET Awards weekend. That was a crazy weekend. We did.
So was that
2018? I went to a BET Awards after party.
2018? 2019?
2018.
Yeah.
I think that was the year I climbed over the fence to get to Jamie Foxx's house. Might have been the year. Maybe it was the year. Yeah. Had to get into the after party. Any means
like, I'm going to hop this fence up.
And then went to the airport to fly to New York to do the Daily Show. And yeah.
That's crazy. I was going to say,
too much.
All right, you already know, man. We got to stop the interview. Shout out to MyBookie right now. If you go to MyBookie and sign up, man. I was just playing roulette, like live with a real person, spinning the ball on webcam at the casino. MyBookie.ag. You can, of course, bet on baseball, but really, you got to get down with the casino. They got the slots. They got all the card games, blackjack, craps, roulette, table games galore. It's a full-fledged casino, MyBookie.ag. And when you sign up with that promo code Bootleg, sign up right now, use that promo code Bootleg. They're gonna get you hooked up with a first deposit bonus. MyBookie.ag. Let's get back to the interview. Now, if you guys don't know about King Palm is all natural, baby. Yes, all right? We're talking about the leader when it comes to tobacco-free, natural, organic leaf wraps. If you're a smoker, a toter, a straight West Coaster, you know what I'm saying? Whatever you're into, King Palms, they got it for you. What's great about these are like one of the best products that they sell. Now, this is a terpene-infused, tobacco-free leaf. And what's dope is you stuff your flower into it, and then you press on the thingy, you know what I'm saying? And then you got flavor. I'm going to show you what it looks like when it's stuffed with some great tree from Hardin, of course. Ah, look at that. Right? Get that thing stuffed up. The tip has got that flavor in it. Wherever you're at, man, make sure you check out the, they got the smoke shops. They got those on lock. They got 7-Elevens on lock. We only smoking out of King Palms, baby. You already know what it is. And if you go to kingpalms.com, kingpalm.com, and you use the promo code BootlegKev, you will save 50% off at checkout, half off at checkout, 50% off if you go to kingpalm.com and use that promo code. The promo code is down below. Go run it up. Try some of these flavors too, man. The peach pineapple, the strawberry shortcake. They just got so much going on. There's also all kind of dope smoking accessories you can get half off, y'all. What are we talking about? Save 50% off. kingpalm.com, promo code below. It's either Bootleg or Bootleg Kev. These promo codes got my head hurt. Try both of them, all right? One of them will get you 50% off, goddammit. Anyway, let's get back to the interview. So now we see Jay Prince. He'll get on social media now, right?
I gotta say, that was He didn't want to have an Instagram. I set up his Instagram.
So you set him up.
You're gonna have to. He's into it now. Yeah.
Because now he's into it. Now he'll be on there. He'll be.
I don't know if that's him personally, but
he'll be by the pool. He'll be. I love when Jay Prince throws his he'll put his little it'd be wise if you stood down.
You can read in his voice, right?
Like what he just said about the NBA young boy Drake thing. I was like, I just hear him speaking. Like I'll read the caption in his voice. I was gonna say, what would, in your opinion, be, or not even in your opinion, but as you know him, something that you think is the biggest misconception about Jay Prince? Because I feel like when I met him, he just seemed like such a nice guy, and I feel like when we think of Jay Prince, we think of this figure that you got to go to Texas, you got to check in with Jay Prince or his son, but I feel like there's a whole side of him that not a lot of people probably see.
That's a good question. I mean, he's a very smart, really really smart guy, knows how to maneuver, and he's not a big boogeyman or anything to me. I mean, I guess if you listen to internet commenters, that might be the perception, but
I mean, he also was. I mean, I want to say one of Floyd Mayweather's first managers. Mm-hmm. So he's he's got
his hands in a lot of stuff. Definitely very savvy businessman, and he's been good to me.
Shout out to Jay Prince.
Working with him.
What ended up leading to Ozone Magazine ending?
The recession.
So 08, 09 was.
We stopped in 2010, and it was really just budget, label budgets not really
being what they were,
making sense anymore. And
right.
A lot of labels owed us money, and I think for me personally, I think I probably was over it a while before that. I mean, for me to I did it for 8+ years. For me to do anything for 8 years is a lot. Yeah, I tend to want to just get on to the next.
What was adventure. The last issue, and was it marketed as the last issue?
No, I want to say it was Ross.
But you didn't.
Maybe it was Big
Did
Boy.
you know it was going to be the last issue, or was it
No.
You're like, guys, that's it, guys.
I was pushing to keep it going, but there was a certain point where definitely the label budgets just kind of dried up.
Right, and that was kind of such a lifeline for your business.
I think I was intending. I mean, I tried to do some TV stuff, and I was intending to kind of spin it into something else as far as the brand. And then at that point, I started traveling a lot overseas. I went on tour with Flow Rider. We went to every continent, and
I bet. Flow Rider.
I think
different kind of bags.
For me, it opened
Celsius
up,
energy bags.
I was telling somebody recently about one of the places we went, Malaysia, or you'd go to some country you've never heard of before, and they would have 5 police escorts lined up to take us to the hotel, and there'd be the hotel staff would all be there with warm rags and champagne to welcome you in a line. It was next level stuff. And I think for me, it really showed me at that point, I was probably still trying to keep the magazine alive, but it was I can't really, to produce a whole magazine every month, you are married to that. That is
right, and you want to see the world.
And
you want to have life experiences.
I want to go. Mm-hmm. We went swimming in the Great Barrier Reef in Australia, and
right.
So it kind of opened up for me. It opened up a lot more. I can actually have time to do stuff besides just editing 24/7. So. Yeah, I feel like social media, for me, it allows me to do a lot of the things I was doing with Ozone without having to pay a printer every month. I always wanted my work to be seen, photography, and just kind of have a voice. So it was good times. It served its purpose. Then also social media came along, and I think once artists could put their own platform, have a platform to express themselves the way they wanted to, that's kind of the purpose of
a magazine. Hey, I want to go do this interview because I need to. They don't
really need us anymore.
Correct the narrative, and now they can just turn their phone.
They're
on.
Overexposed now. They're
overexposed for sure. Have you considered doing a podcast or anything like that in terms of because you have so many stories you could tell, you have so much you could talk about, you have so many relationships.
I have a lot of things that I'm working. I am doing a podcast, not about myself necessarily, but
you told us a little bit about that.
A scripted podcast series. I can't quite
right.
put out there just yet, but coming soon. I will have a photography book out at some point that tells some of my good hip hop stories.
I love it.
I do have some good stories. You got some good stuff out of me.
Yeah, you guys.
I don't think I've done a van life podcast.
Van life.
I know we detoured from the
You
hip hop.
should do a YouTube channel. The van life thing. I mean, listen. I know there's a lot of van life YouTube channels, but that shit is interesting.
I don't even have time.
It's just so.
One more thing to.
I just like.
One more thing to
Episodes
produce.
where you, like, take a rapper on a road trip.
Oh, van life, the
That
podcast.
has been suggested before. Yeah.
I saw.
They would hate it though.
Some guy turned a.
Yeah.
Some guy. Yeah, I'm just like, my algorithm on YouTube is like, lived in a Corvette for 30 days, and there's like a guy who put a sink in the passenger seat of his Corvette and like lives in the back seat. No, it's not even a Corvette, it's a Camaro. And then like the trunk, the back seat's like cut out, so he like lays half his body in the trunk.
I mean, I've been working on the podcast in the van. I love that I can go, hike some mountain in the morning and then actually get some work done.
Yeah. And not have to, and you're kind of not distracted. You can focus. I love it. Well, look, Julia Beverly, we appreciate you coming through.
Thanks for having me.
Look forward to the book and everything else you're working on. Thank you for coming.
For
Boom!
sure.
Hey, appreciate y'all watching another interview brought to you by our good folks at Hardin. Now listen, y'all, when you're in Las Vegas, you get in that fucking Uber, you land at the airport, hit that taxi, tell them to take you to Hardin, the #1 premium cannabis dispensary in the fucking world, y'all. I'm telling you, you walk in, they treat you like a king or a queen or whatever you're into, all right? They got the craziest selection of premium cannabis you'll see, period, anywhere, let alone in Las Vegas, but just anywhere, all right? Not only can you go get the best tree, you will get the best experience, the best customer service, the best bud tenders. You walk into Hardin and that shit just smells amazing. They got their own fucking scent. Literally, you get into my car, I got a bottle of it. My car smells like Hardin because it's just the best fucking place. Go follow them online, Hardin_Las Vegas. Hardin_Las Vegas. Go to their website, hardinlasvegas.com. All right, when you go, you're in Vegas, you pull up, tell them I sent you, they're going to take care of you the right way, all right? Look, they got these things in there, man, these moon rock pre-rolls that I just had that just absolutely melted my face off. Shout out to Hardin, all right? You got to go fuck with Hardin, man. Hardin_Las Vegas. Thank y'all, man. I love these guys. They're like family to us. And, hey, we're going to drop another interview soon. If you're watching this, you're at the end of the interview, though. Much love.